Thank you very much, Tim, for being with us. Tim will speak about Mac computer data access with the new version of MacQuisition from Cellebrite. Tim, please, the stage is yours.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you. That was great. And listening to Italian is like listening to poetry for us English people. So I enjoyed that. Today, I'd like to spend a little bit of time just talking to you about where we are at the moment, what's going on in the world of Cellebrite and computer forensics, because right now we have some really interesting developments going on. Just before I do that, a quick introduction to myself. I don't like talking about myself, but just to say hello, a quick wave to people who are out there listening, let you know that this is me. I'm a former police officer. I was with the police in London for a long time, and I finished as one of the operations managers for terrorism investigations for digital forensics in London. And I've actually was with Black Bag straight after finishing with the police in London, where I was a trainer and a solutions engineer, that type of role. And I've been with Cellebrite since July 2020 this year. That's not because I left Black Bag, it's because Cellebrite bought Black Bag, and we are now part of this great new company, which is going to be a real benefit to you guys out there in the forensic community. Just a very short background, and I'm aware that I don't need to talk too fast because of the translation, but I'll get through this as quickly as I can, because some of you may not realize exactly how we came to exist. Black Bag was born in about 2003 by the guy who's on your screen right now. He was the head of Apple's digital forensics department for about 5 or 6 years, and he was a friend of Steve Jobs at Apple. And what happened was they were being bombarded with requests for how to get data from Apple devices. Now remember, this is way before the iPhone or anything like that, but they were still getting lots of requests about how to get data from Apple devices. So they decided that it'd be a really good idea to outsource this, and that's how Black Bag was born back in 2000, or just prior to 2003. Now, since then, we occupied the space as the Mac specialist for a long time, but since 2014, so a long time ago now, we have been supporting Windows forensics as well. Not only are we now supporting Windows forensics, but we're actually leading the way in which some of the new Windows artifacts are investigated and presented. So it's very interesting for you guys out there to take a look at maybe a case you've processed with another tool, a Windows case, and have a look at it in Blacklight, because you'll be amazed about how many of the artifacts are parsed out and how clearly they're displayed, etc. I recommend you give it a go. Of course, we continue to lead the way in respect of Mac forensics, and we've been the first to support APFS. And when I say support, I mean full support, not limited support that some of the other Windows tools will give you around APFS. We were the first to give you the ability to take a physical decrypted image from a T2 chip Mac. This is super, super important. The other tools can only give you logical reads, but we will give you a physical read from a T2 chip Mac. Now, despite what others in the same space may say about logical being as good as it gets, this is not true. You will miss many thousands of files if you rely on a logical read from a T2 chip Mac. You really need, if you want the most forensic job possible, you really need to go grab an image using MacQuisition so that you have a physical decrypted image. And of course, by the end of this year, and now it's creeping, I think, to the maybe the first week of January. I'm not entirely sure myself, more on this later, but MacQuisition itself will become a tool called Cellebrite Digital Collector. This is because we are now finally going to be able to give you guys a tool that will do all of your imaging and triaging of Macs and Windows workstations, all on the one tool. And this is something that us who've worked for Blackbag are terribly excited about. Been waiting for this for a long time, and now we have it. It's on the verge. I've been looking at the beta this week. It's looking very good. We've also brought on board all sorts of new technologies. In the last 2 years of my life at Blackbag, before I swapped over to Cellebrite, the amount of new technology that's gone into Blacklight as a Windows and Mac forensic tool is staggering. We have artificial intelligence in the form of things like image categorization. We have plug-in modules such as one that's called Apollo, which gives you really granular detail and examination of SQL databases on Android or Windows devices. Anywhere where you're seeing an SQL database, our Apollo scripts will pull that apart for you in great detail. But of course, the biggest news for us in 2020 was when we found out at the beginning of the year that we are now a Cellebrite company. And the news broke in January for us when we were all over at our headquarters in San Jose. And the takeover is now complete, and we've been working alongside our colleagues at Cellebrite now for a long time. And the difference is already kicking in. I can tell you the amount of product changes and future plans is quite staggering. You'll probably be familiar with some of the tools I have on the slide on the screen right now. They've been around for a while, and I was certainly using them in my law enforcement days very much. Things like UFED and Physical Analyzer. And you'll notice that some of these tools now include the tools that you're familiar with from the old Blackbag tool set. So I'm talking about Cellebrite MacQuisition and Cellebrite Blacklight. Well, if you look at the slide right now, Cellebrite MacQuisition in a week or two's time will actually be called Cellebrite Digital Collector. This is because it's no longer a Mac-only tool. This will do exactly the same functionality with Windows machines as it currently does for Macs. And this is great news. There is one thing that it won't be doing, which is grabbing the Windows RAM in this first release, but that is coming too. So apart from that, everything that you know MacQuisition could do with a Mac, it can do with a Windows workstation right now. So this tool will of course complement other tools in the tool set that you see from Cellebrite, and we already have integrations allowing us to work with Cellebrite's Physical Analyzer and Pathfinder. And this is also going to help in the future. Should you be one of those organizations or companies that are able to make use of the integration of some of the tool sets, you'll find that that's going to be really useful going forward. But of course, it's important that the tools remain to give you options as standalone items as well. And I kind of like that. I like, being ex-law enforcement, I understand the value of having dual tools and the ability to verify your findings. I think that's important, and long may it last. So some of the reasons that we're seeing that this is going to be really quite good news is that sometimes it's a lot easier for the larger organizations to deal with a single vendor. And sometimes it's very good for our customers who really do appreciate that they know what the vision is. They know that they're dealing with a company that has a really good vision of the future. And it's important in the forensics world, I'm sure you guys see this all the time, to know that the company is actually going places rather than sitting still. And that's another good reason for having competition, because it forces everyone to develop and bring new stuff to the market. So this is one of the benefits that's got to be good for the customer. And of course, we're kicking this off right now with this new integration with our Cellebrite, which has forced out this brilliant new concept of having a digital collector for Windows and Mac. So this is what the tool will look like. This is a very early slide. Forgive me, it's my slide. It doesn't look very pretty right now. But you're going to have in your hands with MacQuisition, aka Cellebrite Digital Collector, you're going to have a tool that will do 4-in-1s. It will be a 4-in-1 solution for triage, live data acquisition, targeted data acquisition, and forensic imaging. Now, many of you I know over in Italy who've been using MacQuisition for ages will know that it's a very well respected tool just for Macs, but now all of this functionality is coming to Windows. So you will be able to use it to preview and collect documents and pictures. You can run live keyword searches on your machines before collection. You can use it to just simply browse the file system. And then you can take your collection and you can, this is obviously very important in the forensic world, wrap up your collection in an LO1 container. And it's even more important in the Mac world in many ways, because if you don't protect the Mac metadata, you will lose it. And there are over 168 items of metadata with a Mac file compared to 20 or 30 with a Windows file. And a lot of people still find themselves falling into the trap where they're copying logically files from the Mac file system onto, say, a FAT32 volume. You will lose a lot of your metadata if you do that. So take care to use the LO1. We do have a webinar out there right now already that walks people through how to do these live collections with the new triage tools. And of course, my point I made a minute ago is perhaps still the most valid point. There are many hundreds of thousands of devices out there which have the T2 chip on board right now. And if you want a physical image, you need to use MacQuisition. You can use MacQuisition for a logical image, but don't forget you will miss. And once again, if you need more information on that, you can contact me, or you can look at some of the papers we've published on the website that explain to you what files you will miss. The digital collector will come again with NTFS drivers, so you'll be able to use it on a Mac and write out to NTFS volumes, because natively Macs do not write to NTFS, but with our tool you'll be able to do that. We now currently have a mechanism for you to deploy MacQuisition element of digital collector remotely, so that you can do remote collections by sending the imaging tool to another location. Later next year, and we'll be looking at the roadmap in a minute, later next year, we will have true remote collection for both Windows and Macs for you to make use of. Okay, so you'll end up with a pretty powerful tool. It'll do all of these things listed on the screen here, and it's coming from a company that you can trust. Blackbag has been around a long time, and Cellebrite has been around a long time too, and we are definitely taking the advantage with this tool in the marketplace right now. No one else is producing a tool that can image both. Here's a couple of examples to compare with the competition. Some of the things that you can do with Digital Collector, but you won't be able to do with some of the competitors in the Windows world. You can see from the chart where the gaps are. And also in the triage world. Again, you can see Digital Collector gives you all of those options and puts us ahead of the competition. This is what many of you will have in your hands right now if you are currently an old Blackbag customer and you're using MacQuisition. This is the SSD, the slightly newer version of the device. And what customers who have this device will be able to do will be able to upgrade. Please don't quote me on the prices that you see on the screen there. This is the latest information I have from sales on this, but it's not something that I can agree or guarantee is absolutely correct. But at the end of the day, what you're able to do is you'll be able to update your device and you'll be able to get a slightly bigger SSD if you need to. And I recommend the 1 terabyte device. Obviously, it's going to be slightly more expensive, but it means that you pretty much can be guaranteed to do most of your collections onto there and not need any other external media. Now, I want to just very quickly, before we go into some detail of the actual down into the weeds, if you like, I wanted to just talk to you about Blacklight, because if you haven't had a chance to look at Blacklight recently, I recommend you do take a look. Maybe get yourself a free trial and have a look at this, because this tool is ripping through Windows analysis right now. It's doing everything that most of the competitors are doing in respect of Windows analysis, and it's displaying that in a way in which it makes it very simple and easy to understand. It also gives you very good granular control over how you process your evidence. You don't simply have to hit a find all evidence button. You have the ability to go select processing that you want to apply to your piece of evidence, depending on what it is you're looking for, perhaps, or depending on your time restrictions. And those processes are very easy to switch on and off in Blacklight. So if you suddenly realize actually the focus of your investigation isn't pictures anymore, you can stop the picture processing and put all of the computer's energy, if you like, into processing the documents. We give you quite a good granular level of control over the evidence item that you're processing. Of course, we like to keep leading the way with Mac forensics, and we will continue to do this. And you know for sure that our engineering team are always pushing the boundaries with Mac analysis. For instance, we have great support now for 1015 time capsule backups, which, by the way, are very important because a lot of people are using time capsule right now because the current flavors of Mac machines means it's very important for people to back their devices up, because if you damage one of these T2 chip Macs or one of these new M1 Macs, you're going to find it very difficult to find anyone who can recover your data. So backing it up is very important. And of course, forensics, if you have a time capsule backup, sometimes it's potentially far easier to get into one of those than it is into the actual T2 chip device, which, as you know, the security on this is pretty good, pretty impressive stuff, really. But for me, the key takeaway here is Windows. This Blacklight is excelling at Windows analysis now, and you really need to take a look at it. As far as talking to other tools and the sort of ecosystem in which we operate, you can see that Blacklight has been written and designed to communicate with other tools, because, as I said at the beginning, we really do believe it's important to have this interconnectivity. There's no point locking things down so you can't share them. So on my slide here, in the orange, you can see some of the integrated features within Blacklight, such as Windows memory analysis. Down there at the sort of 7 o'clock, if you imagine it was a clock face we're looking at, it says memory analysis. This is built into Blacklight. This is Windows memory analysis, where you can very easily analyze Windows memory dumps, crash dumps, hyper file, page file, that sort of thing is all automated and done for you nicely in Blacklight. Smart indexing. We have what we call smart indexings. We've learned from some of the mistakes that have been made in the past, and we don't index absolutely everything on your drive. We will index the user-generated data, including user-generated metadata. So this makes it very easy for you to get to your keywords quickly if you need to rely on indexing. Apollo I already mentioned for getting to grips with your SQL databases. And Passware, we have around there at the sort of 1 o'clock position I've mentioned Passware. This is because we have a partnership with Passware, and their technology is integrated inside Blacklight to enable you to mount and deal with encrypted containers such as BestCrypt, TrueCrypt, VeriCrypt, all of those types of containers, and BitLocker. So we will support directly inside Blacklight BitLocker containers. So if you have the password, you can mount the BitLocker container. Then in white, wrapped around my sort of old black bag logo, in white are some of the technologies we talk to. So obviously Blacklight, you can ingest reads from the Cellebrite tools into Blacklight. You can ingest Burla reads, so the vehicle telematics company that are sort of leaders in vehicle forensics. We will accept extractions from their vehicles straight into Blacklight. This is great because this means you can look at someone's their Windows device, their Mac device, their iOS device, their Android device, their vehicle read. You can look at all of those reads in the one tool, and you can see all of that in a very easy to understand interface inside Blacklight. And of course, we talk to some of the other tools which are very popular for image analysis, such as Griffi and Blue Bear Lace, that type of thing. Yeah, lots going on there. And the future, lots going on in the future. I've already told you about how I feel about the rate and the pace of change. It seems to be growing exponentially. We have some really interesting stuff that's come on board the tool just in the last couple of weeks, things such as activity correlation, and timeline is back. This is great news. We had a really good timeline in Blacklight years ago, but then it got left behind a little bit, and so we took it out about 2 years ago because we weren't happy with it. Or it might be longer than 2 years ago, but it's come back now, and it's come back on steroids. This is very, very efficient timeline, very easy to use, and if you get yourselves a trial and have a look at this, you'll be super impressed about how easy it is to use. And of course, the other thing under the now column to mention is this integration. So for those of you that do use other Cellebrite tools such as Pathfinder, which is an excellent sort of add-on analytics tool to mobile phone forensics, well, you can now make use of that for your computer forensics as well. So this is really great news if you're in that situation. So what's coming next? Well, early next year, we will have the ability to do remote collections. We are extending way beyond some of our competitors our support for Windows artifacts. And we're doing all sorts of other improvements, such as email improvement and some what we're calling wizard assisted extraction technology. So this is where, if you're not a true forensic ninja, we will give you some prompts and some help and some wizard advice as you process your case. And then looking to the future, well, it's impossible to imagine what's going to be happening in the future, but we have such a huge development team now. I'm excited about this, and I think the real beneficiaries will be you guys out there in the field. So what I'd like to do now is sort of, now we've done the overview and I guess the sales pitch, is actually look at some of this technology that's been affecting you. And I know I was asked to talk about a couple of things that are bothering you guys at the moment. And of course, this was the big one. This has been around for a while now, this horrible T2 situation that we find ourselves in. And we actually saw this started to arrive back in 2017 when it was in the really high-end iMacs, the iMac Pros, which very few people had, because I think the starting price was about $5,000 US, something ridiculous like that. And early on, people thought that that was where this T2 chip was going to stay. Some people were saying that's where it was going to stay. But unfortunately for us forensic guys, that wasn't the case. And as you know, pretty much every single Mac computer since 2018 has been coming out with the T2 chip inside it. And this is super, super good security, really good for customers, not so good for us investigators. And the technology that the T2 chip uses is something that you guys will remember when the iPhone 4S came out all those years ago now. That was the first time we started sort of cussing Apple, because all of a sudden we couldn't get to the emails and things like that on the iPhone. And those were being protected by this type of technology, the T1 chip. But now we have this T2 chip. And it pretty much it gives hardware encryption to the device itself. And the only thing that can decrypt the data that you're finding on these SSDs now is the very same chip that laid it down on the SSD. So you cannot take a hard drive out of one Mac and put it in another that has a T2 chip and get it decrypted. It does not work like that. They're uniquely linked together. The device is also the thing that is responsible for preventing booting to external devices through something that Apple calls secure boot. There are some people, some professors and some very clever people who feel they may have identified some vulnerabilities with the T2 chip, but the reality of these vulnerabilities at the moment is they're not real vulnerabilities that are going to be of any practical use to us normal people who do forensics for a living. This is not something that we're going to be able to exploit. There is no way of taking this off the motherboard and putting it onto another motherboard and things like that. It just doesn't happen. People have tried and they've come unstuck very quickly. One of the methods, and the Cellebrite backed method, if you like, the preferred method and the most forensically sound method of dealing with one of these devices right now, means putting the subject device into target disk mode. When you put the device into target disk mode, it's possible to connect it to your own forensic Mac. And if you're running MacQuisition on your own forensic Mac, then you do not have to use any software, hardware write blocking technology, because MacQuisition, if your forensic Mac is booted to MacQuisition, your forensic Mac will be forensically sound, and it will not write to the target disk mode machine. One of the big problems that I constantly get calls about is people are trying to connect their Macs using the power cable that came with the Mac, because it's USB-C power. This is no good. You need to use a cable that has this squiggly line on the side. You know, the USB logo, the USB-C logo, the Thunderbolt logo, the ones I have on my slide there. You must make sure you use one of these. And when you do that, and if you've been able to put your machine into target disk mode, then you can use MacQuisition to go grab yourselves the image, or you can triage the device, or you can access the disk in this way. You will need the password. You'll be very lucky to find a machine that has not got File Vault enabled on these machines, on these two chip machines. If that is the case, you will need the password. There is no way around this currently available to the likes of you and me. So you will need the password. Now, things have just got a whole lot worse again, haven't they? We now have something out there called the Apple M1 chip. I don't know if anyone who's seen what this looks like right now, but here's a picture of one. This is actually what this isn't the chip itself, but this is the container that the chip lives inside. See the silver thing on the screen right now? That's the container. These are very clever devices. There's no cooling on these that you can see. There's no fan cooling is what I mean. They are so efficient, and the performance that people have been getting off of these things is amazing. And this is only on the early ones. We're yet to see the high spec release of these. The first ones hit the shelves in the shops on the 17th of November, and I've already taken a call from one of the police forces in Europe about how to deal with one of these. Inside that silver thing, this is what's going on in there. You have the M1 chip itself, but you also have all of these other devices and functions going on inside the silver device itself. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to be thinking about here, and there's a lot of reverse engineering that needs to be done to really get to grips with what's going on inside this device right now. We recommend, as of right now, because target disk mode is no longer available on the M1 device, we recommend that you make use of what's replaced it, and that's something that Apple referred to as Mac disk sharing. And to access this functionality on one of these Macs, you need to hold down the power button until the Startup Manager appears. The Startup Manager looks similar to the old Startup Manager on the Macs, but you will see an options button like the one I have on, hopefully you can see on my slide here. I'm sorry they're not as clear as they could be, but this is early days and we were taking these pictures with cameras. Then you go and select the options. And when you look at the options window, you have this this pretty window comes up. This is designed obviously for restoring or repairing your Mac. And what you need to do is go to the Utilities menu, and at the top of the screen, you'll see under Utilities, you'll see that you have the ability to click on Share Disk. Okay, when you go up to there, bear in mind you might see more than one disk, but in a normal situation, you're likely to see something similar to what you can see on the screen right now. And if you hit Start Sharing, this is how we manage to connect to our own forensic machine itself by making this available. So here we would go to connect to server, and then we would browse on our own forensic machine to the connected M1 device. When you're ready to go, once you have a connection, you should see the connected device appear in your Finder window. Like in this case, it's called a Mac Mini. You will then have to authenticate. Now, if FileVault isn't on, you might get away with this, but it's unlikely that FileVault will not be on. But if you do get confronted by this window, it's very easy. You can select guest, as on the screen you can see there, and off you go. This will be good enough. Now, what we found was on these early releases of these M1 machines, FileVault was not on by default. This would be fantastic if Apple forget to put FileVault on by default. I strongly suspect Apple will not forget to put FileVault on by default. So you know when you're setting up your nice new shiny Mac and you go next, 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 and you're hitting all of these buttons and you're just going through it as quickly as you can. On the previous versions of Mac hardware, one of those next buttons was activate FileVault. Now, I would imagine that on these new ones exactly the same thing will happen, but on some of the early machines, like the one that we tested here, that was not the case and FileVault was not on. If FileVault is on, you're likely to see this. When you go to the recovery, recovery mode, you're likely to see this from the Startup Manager, and you'll see you'll get invited to enter a password. And you'll see that the disk reports itself as being encrypted. And the bottom line here, gents, is that no password means there is no possibility of sharing that disk if you don't have that password. And you can see on the screen here, this is where you would enter the password. And once again, once you enter the password, the device will display as a network connected device. You'll see that nice, the sharing logo, the three humanoids holding hands sharing. That's not very COVID friendly, is it? But I guess that's what's going on there. That's the sharing logo. That will mount on your desktop. If not, it'll be in your Finder sidebar, and you'll be able to access it from there. I don't know whether there's any questions that I can take right now. Happy to do so if that is the case. What I'll do, as I have a couple of minutes, because I think everyone was running over a little bit, is I'm just going to jump off the presentation and just show you very quickly, because MacQuisition has changed a little bit over the last year, and some of those new features that have come into the tool and will be present in Digital Collector when it arrives are shown for you on the screen right now. Up at the top here, in the command bar, that we call this area of the screen of MacQuisition at the top, the command bar, we have two new buttons that appeared this year. One says browser and one says search. This because we've given the ability to triage the machine using these two extra pieces of functionality rather than relying simply on the data collection functionality here on the third button or the image functionality. One very important thing to note here was it also included this year the ability for you to change the time on the machine that you're examining. This is because these newer Macs, when the battery was going flat on them, you were ending up with, it was affecting the way in which you could interact with them, because it was resetting to a Mac epoch of, I think, 1971. So you were unable to actually interact with them. So if you select the change button on MacQuisition right now, another window opens up, and this window gives you the ability to change the time settings so that you can then interact properly with the device. I just very quickly, because I don't want to go into someone else's time slot, I'm going to mention quickly here what these new buttons actually do. Browser doesn't really need an explanation. It just gives you the ability to browse the machine. Now remember, this is good for Windows or for Macs. Search. does exactly that. So let's take a very quick look at search. And search is one of my favorite tools in this new version of Digital Collector, because when you open up the search window, you have the ability to narrow the focus by location. If you know the name of the file, you can go straight searching across the device for a name of a file, or you can sort by extension, narrow your focus by size of the file, or down here is where you would actually do a search for content. So if I very quickly just jump here and I narrow the focus down to my downloads folder, if I hit search now, what will be shown to me is the content, the whole of the contents of Tim's downloads folder. And you can see this is running live on my machine right now. And I don't keep a very tidy downloads folder, that's for sure. One of the things I might want to do at this stage is come over to the extension filter and narrow this down by taking a filter that says, is this, let's just look for PDFs to start with. If I select a PDF and I hit search again, now only PDFs are shown in my results. If I pick one of these PDFs here, I get a preview of the PDF over here in the preview window on the right-hand side of the screen. And I can decide if this is the document that I am interested in. If I just want to add this to my collection, all I do is I come back to the listing and I right-click on it and I add this to my collection. Simple as that. If I wanted to do a keyword search, if I just come over to where it says content, and if I type, just to be safe here, let's type black bag. And then I'm going to ask the search to search inside binary files and inside documents, because I don't want it to not look inside things like Word documents, zip containers like that. So I want it to look inside those. And I'm going to take my PDF filter off so that it's going to look inside anything that's available in the downloads folder now. And when I hit search, you can see I'm giving it a little bit more to think about now, because it's actually having to open up any of those compressed files. So any of those Word documents, any of those compressed PDFs, it's having to open those up, look inside before it can present the findings to me. And also, guess what? Tim's noticed a typo there, because it should not be spelt like that. So let me just put that right. Black bag, now hit search. Hopefully that will work a little bit better. So what we're doing is we're looking for the word black bag in any documents in my downloads folder. The other tools that have been around for a while the search is going on, I'll just cover those very quickly. You can see up here the old collection methodology is still available and still valid, because the good thing about this is you can, if I select that for you now, leave the search running in the background, I can actually come into this and look at all of the different categories that the engineers have prepared for us. It may be I'm only interested in the Chrome artifacts, or maybe I just want email from this computer. So I can rely on the logical collection methodology if I choose to, rather than doing the manual method. You can see down here, right tucked at the bottom, is where that one file I've already added, that PDF, is available in my collection tab, and that's where all of the collection documents that you go for will be displayed. Let's just pop back and see how if the search has returned a result. So there's my search result has returned, and you can see it tells you what the hits are, and you can imagine that on the word black bag has appeared a lot in some of these documents. And you can see, for instance, if I select one of these documents, something that's likely to be readable, let's take oh look, here's a competitor's, well no, here's a PowerPoint. It's not a PowerPoint, it's a Keynote, which is a the Mac equivalent of PowerPoint, and so it even previews the keynotes or PowerPoints for you. If I decide I wanted to add this to my collection, once again, a simple right click, add selected item to collection. So then when we go to the collection button, we should now see, and of course we do, down in the bottom, that we have 2 files ready to add to our collection. The final button, and the one that's probably most useful for people who need to do pure forensics and get the best possible image, is the imaging button. So when you select the imaging button, you will get a listing of what is going on with the machine that you're looking at, and you will also see any attached media as well. So in this case here, you can see I have some USB devices that are attached, and because I entered the password, the administrator's password in this case, I can see the physical RAM that's available for me to collect here as well. Remember, Mac RAM is heavily compressed, 1.5 times. I always say double it. So if I would make sure that I had at least 32 gigs of space available to me if I was to go grab this. Now, the complexities of imaging Macs is well documented. Because we're talking about things like APFS containers and T2 chips, in this particular case, I could also be looking at things such as HFS and core storage, which is the predecessor to the way in which Mac file systems worked. Each has a different approach, but the important thing to remember with APFS is that you cannot image any one of these individual volumes inside the APFS container. If you want to image this device, please grab disk 1. The whole of the physical, or not physical, the virtually mounted container, the APFS container, not the individual volumes. Please don't be tempted just to go grab the data volume, because you will not be successful in decoding that. Over on the right hand side is where you choose your imaging formats. And if I select the APFS container over here on the right hand side so that it's highlighted, if I take a look at what formats are available to me, you'll see that we have to use AFF4 in this case. And this is simply because the only way we can get that physical decrypted image off there is to use the AFF4 format. And for APFS, because this data is stored in a non-linear fashion on the hard drive, we have to use this open source format to go grab the data in a random stroke non-linear fashion and lay it out for your collection. Some information about the training courses that we have. There are obviously Windows training courses, there's advanced Apple forensics, and there's a 2-day tool training course which we show you how to use Blacklight to tackle Windows and Apple investigations. I'm also going to stick just my final slide just to say there's my email address. I'm more than happy to take direct emails from anyone out there who wants more information or has any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks to you. It has been a very interesting talk. I can see that in the question and answer area there are already some questions for you about this new version. So if you could be so kind and reply to our spectators, it would be very nice. Intervento molto interessante, ringraziamo Tim e ringraziamo anche Cellebrite per questo intervento molto tecnico. Avete visto quali sono le novità di MacQuisition che sono appunto state appena rilasciate